Welcome to module 5 of leveling up your Instagram. I hope you enjoyed the last module and really got a handle on the type of content you're going to create and kind of how to go about that and making the plan and everything. So I hope you now have a strategy for that. And this module is fairly short, but I just didn't want this information to get lost in the last module, which was the longest, and this is still really important information. I just didn't want to add it on to that module. So in this module, we're just going to talk about the look of your grid. You've put in all the hard work creating all that content and coming up with all of the strategies and everything. So you want it to pull together to make all of that effort into good use. So what that really means, like the bottom line, which is basically this entire module, is just to take the time to organize and plan your content. You've created it all, you're really excited to post it all, but you still need to put in that effort to lay it out, make sure it's gonna look good, because if you're gonna work on your brand and want brand consistency, then that is the most important. We are going to talk about why you should put the effort into a cohesive grid and why tying it all back to your brand is so important. We'll talk about consistency again, which has been a common thread through this whole course. Like I said, this one is short, but if we're going to go in linear order of creating your overall Instagram strategy, this one comes next after you've created the content. So let's jump into it and talk about why this even matters. So having a cohesive grid is key to overall branding. If you're like me, you get really excited about the content that you just made and you just want to post your favorite video or photo. I'm really bad for that. Like, I get home, look at all the photos, pick one, and I'm just like, I just want to post this one because it's the best one. However, you do have to slow down and just look at the flow of your overall grid. Sometimes there are better photos that will fit into your grid better than your favorite one, which also means you can take your favorite one and make sure that it fits in later in your content, but it might not be the first one that you can post. So what that also means is taking all the content that you've just created and laying it out in front of you and really playing around with the look to make sure it looks good. So like I said, having a cohesive grid is key to overall branding, and you don't want to make it look like your brand is just a mess and all over the place. That can be a reflection of your business and how you're running your business. If that triggers someone's brain like that, if they see it that it's like kind of a mess and kind of disorganized, they could think that that's how you run your business, or that's how the rest of you and your operations goes, which you obviously don't want. Your grid, like I mentioned in the first module, is your business's first impression to followers. It's like your homepage, and people that are seeing your feed for the first time, you want to have a good first impression, obviously. So good, like you want your first impression to be so good that they want to follow you. So it's one thing to just look good and people be like, oh great, but it's another thing to have them be like, oh my god, I want to keep following them and see what they're going to post and actually follow you, and then ideally they turn into customers as well. You have less than a second really to grab someone's attention, which is not a lot of time at all. However, our eyes are quick, our brains are quick, so as long as you can see like the 9 posts, if they look good, then that's enough to trigger someone to follow you. So the first 9, like I said, that's what people look at. That's how they decide if they're going to follow you or not follow you. And it shows what type of account you are and should really just give an overall vibe and message of what your whole business is about. So this kind of goes back to the content pillars that I talked about in the last module. If you tie in the different types of content, then it'll give you the variety and well-roundedness to show someone your whole brand when they're looking at the first 9 posts. So if you look at the accounts, like just as an example, if you look at the accounts that you like to follow, you'll most likely be able to see their aesthetic and why you like to follow them within the first 9 posts, which is probably what happened when you went to their page in the first place and why you follow them. You might just not have thought about it. So if you just use it as an example, look at like the type of things that you like and what stands out in those 9 posts and really why you decided to follow them, and kind of keep that in mind as you're creating your content, and always keep in mind those 9 posts. It is good to have like filler content, and sometimes you do add in like a flat lay, even though you won't it won't get as much engagement necessarily, but it'll look good for your overall grid. So you just want to keep that in mind when you're picking the type of posts to post when you're looking at the home feed of your grid. So just to tie this all together, your grid, which has an overall look, tells the visual story of your brand and who you are. So whether that's bold or moody or minimalistic or whatever you're going for, that's what those posts will show. So you can tell a lot about a company or a person, depending on what kind of account it is, by the first look at someone's page. So you just want to keep that in mind. And that's why having a cohesive grid matters. So let's just talk briefly about layout strategy. I actually had someone reach out and ask me this very specific thing. So that's why I wanted to put it in here, because if one person's asked a question, then other people have probably thought about it. So when it comes to putting together a strategy, this technically doesn't have to like be written down per se, but it's just important as the rest of your content strategies and just to keep it in mind. So like I mentioned, flat lays, like are you going to include flat lays? Are you going to include quotes, product details, meme, selfie, staff features, etc.? You want to make sure all of those get laid out properly so you don't have similar looking content right beside each other or right on top of each other. You might not think people notice, and maybe they don't notice, especially if they're just scrolling and never go to your actual feed. However, it does just look better if you keep that in mind and spread out the types of posts. So you want the photos around each photo to complement it and also not be exactly the same. So it sounds really complicated like that, but it's not. If you're looking at an app or just laying it out, it's not hard. But you just want to keep it in mind. It sounds a little OCD, but you've already put so much effort into all of this up until this point, so there's no reason to just ruin all of that now. It takes 1 second to just move around photos. So for example, if you have a dark green accent color in your palette, then you want to make sure that there's a pop of green happening like every fourth-ish post. So if there's 4, it means that it won't be right on top of the next row, it'll just be like 1 over. So it's a good way to spread out the types of content. You also want to make sure if you do have something like that, that it is within those 9. So every 4th photo puts in 2 of your like accent color or whatever it is you're trying to do into the 9 posts. So I highly recommend every 4th post to be like the type of color you're going for. Depending on just like the type of person you are and what you think looks better. Some people do like quotes all on one column, or every other row on the same column, or videos or things like that. So it depends for those types of posts if you want them to be all in the same order or if you want them to be like spread out or diagonal. It's totally up to you. But it does help to use a strategy and a planner to put all of that together. When you have your content calendar already made, so depending on what order you do this in, so I have a client that will do the photos first and make sure the photos line up, and then we'll do the captions and content calendar afterwards to match the photos. Or how I do my own personal stuff is I have the captions done, and what I do for other clients is I do the content calendar with the dates, and then I'll go and put in the photos, and then I'll just switch around the photos as opposed to the actual content. So it just depends how you want to do that. Because you might have to switch around the order of the content or photos depending on what it looks like once you get it like from your content calendar to the actual like planning. So keeping that in mind, that is why planning is so important. So before I had apps for both myself and clients, I was just lazy, just too many steps. Like I'm only like a 1-step kind of person. Like I don't want to upload it here and then have to organize it and then upload it to Instagram and then have to post. Like I'm just like, can I just take it and post? So before, when that was what I was doing, there was a lot of times where I would think it's gonna look good because I'm like, oh, like it has a color, it has that, and I upload it and it just looks terrible in it, so I have to delete it and then go re-post it and draft it and with a caption and everything. And so it just kind of like deflates the whole momentum of your posting if you have to delete it because it just doesn't fit in your grid. And it's easily solvable by just using a proper planning app when you are putting together your content. So there's a million planning apps and different apps. So whatever ones work best for you, I've already mentioned them in previous modules, but I just wanted to put them up here again so that you know which ones I use for planning. if you're like me and I do most things on my computer, make sure that you pick an app that has a good desktop version, just in case, because like lots of my photos, like they're all on my computer. I don't usually edit them on my phone unless they're just like iPhone photos or something. So I have everything on here, so it's a lot easier to just do everything on your computer, and it's also a bigger screen. I just really dislike doing things on my phone. Most of the apps now also offer a Instagram story planning component. So this is things for, like I said, that are like time sensitive or like sales or the graphics that you've put together. You can actually put them into the planner so that it reminds you when to post them. So you don't have to worry about going to like look through all of your photos on your phone and things like that. They're already there. So ones I've already mentioned, but I'll just mention them again, that I actually use are Plan, Planoly, Later, and Tailwind. I love them all. They also, just as a side note, they all have really great blogs and newsletter content. So if you're looking for more tips and just updated information and advice and just things about social media, they all have really good blogs that they send out in their newsletters. I learn a ton. I actually read all of those newsletters basically every day for new tips and tricks and just like hashtag strategies and what you should be doing and is Instagram changing and what is the algorithm. Highly recommend. So the last module basically talks about everything you need to know for stories and how to keep them on brand for the rest of your content. But I just wanted to reiterate again the importance of consistent branding. You want to have a recognizable and rememberable brand so that your audience remembers who you are and has that, like if they need like a haircut, then they automatically like have it in the back of their brain that they should go to you, kind of thing. Keeping things on brand with a consistent color palette will not only keep your audience here, but also make it easier to have a good aesthetic. So we all kind of, if you're in marketing or you have some sort of idea of marketing, you know how important branding is and how important colors are, and just being able to recognize it. We all can recognize McDonald's yellow. It doesn't matter where it is. We just automatically think that, whether or not you actually eat McDonald's or don't eat McDonald's, we already know that. So you will probably, unless you're that big of a company, but you probably won't ever get to like that stage where like the entire world knows your branding, but just for your customers, just so they can recognize who you are and what you offer, because that's what you want, is for them to make that personal connection so that they come back and purchase your products or services or whatever you're offering. So that's the end of module 5. I told you it was short, quick, and to the point. Your homework for this module is just to download a planning app. Put your content into the planning app and just see how it works to like drag around the photos and stuff like that. They're all very straightforward, but if you do have any questions, just send me an email and I can walk you through how to set it up and how to use them. So that is the end of this module, and we will see you in the next one.